Liking dogs is such an uncontroversial opinion that they as a species have collectively earned the title of being man's best friend. But if you know me and you read the video title at all, you know that that's not what we're going to be talking about around here. That's boring. Today we're going to be dissecting the demographic of dogs that are more deserving of a title like man's arch nemesis, man's worst nightmare, worst enemy, worst menace. You get the idea. We're going to be dissecting and breaking down the concept of shitty dogs. In this video, I'll be including some personal anecdotes, personal experiences of mine, so that my reasoning can be actually grounded in human experience as opposed to just me talking out of my ass the whole time. It also just makes everything less boring, so how about we get into it, shall we? Now, to begin, being a person who admittedly likes dogs and deeply appreciates their existence, I do honestly believe that they're among the best house pets that anyone can own. They are friendly, you can have cordial ties with them, which makes them great companions. They're loyal, and probably best of all for some people, they are protective. Some dogs can really push the envelope when it comes to being protective, so much so that they end up outright being menaces, protecting against a threat that isn't there and are willing to intimidate anything that they just, for whatever reason, whether it be a person, another dog, or anything else that they just decide to hate. And that is a big problem. I really do think so. This leads me to the first anecdote that I'm about to tell here, and that is I used to have some neighbors down the street who used to own a black German Shepherd, which I found out some time ago was actually a pretty rare and more expensive breed of dogs. For the purposes of this first story, I'm going to be referring to the black German Shepherd as the street menace, just a more memorable name and just something to refer to it by, who, oddly enough, despite its aggression, never was ever on a leash. It would have a collar, of course, but never at any point did I ever see the dog come outside, harass someone, and then not have a leash on. You were able to afford a pretty rare breed of dog. Why not just get it a freaking leash? You know what I'm saying? But anyways, there was two encounters that I know of, or I can recall, that I had with this dog. Now, it's not like before the first encounter I didn't already know the dog was aggressive. I had seen it nearly come to blows with another person's dog outside. It was very interesting a scene it was, because the person who would always attempt to restrain the dog was a kid who looked like he had just entered middle school. And whenever he'd come outside, regardless of how cold it was, he would always come out shirtless, with shorts on, and barefoot, almost like it was a spur-of-the-moment thing, or that he just kind of had to rush outside without much warning, in his drip, per se. First encounter, I remember I had just been outside for some time, playing with my football, was returning back home on foot. It's worth mentioning that they don't necessarily live on the same side of the road as me, so I was across the street away from their house. So as I was walking up, I saw the dog outside. It spotted me, ran over, and just began barking at me incessantly. Kid comes outside shirtless with shorts on and no shoes whatsoever. Oddly enough, seemed to be the only person who even tried to be a responsible dog owner in that house for whatever reason. So dog comes up to me. It's basically face to face with me, blocking my way at this point. And you can kind of tell from its body language that it was indeed an aggressive bark. I know there's many nuances to barks and dogs, but it was very clearly aggressive. I mean, it was like grounding itself. It was jutting out towards me. It had deep growls in its barks every now and then, and I sure as hell remember that its tail wasn't wagging. So the guy had to come over, or the kid had to come over, and get the dog away from me, as he was telling me repeatedly to not move, I guess for fear of further agitating the dog, as it was already in an aggressive state of mind. To which, once again, I must ask, why the hell wasn't the dog on a leash? And what the fuck is it even doing outside, man? So he chases it off, right? Or he doesn't chase it off, he more so tries to, catch it, but it just runs off and he has to run after it. So I just walk away, admittedly a little bit shaken up given the encounter. You already know with dogs, their freaking jaws can open like this wide, and they could just turn you into supper time whenever they want to. So now moving on to the second encounter, it was at nighttime this time. It was foggy, I believe it was somewhere between the hours of 7 to 9 p.m. And I just remember this dog was barking outside. I don't even know if it was barking at anything, frankly, this dog would bark at air if it could, and it probably was doing that. Apparently, dogs don't get tired of barking because they could continue on for hours, and I know for sure that this one did. So I was getting annoyed, so I decided to go outside and deal with it. Tell everyone in my house, oh, I'm just going outside to get some fresh air and whatnot. I was gonna deal with this in one of two ways. Either one, I was gonna tell it to shut up, so I was essentially just gonna shout down the hill to it to shut up. Problem being is that I live in a relatively peaceful suburban neighborhood. Should I have done that, I would have been causing a scene. Worst case scenario, call the cops on me. So, I wasn't really going to risk that. Or two, I was just going to go down the hill, come face to face with the dog and then just investigate it. Or just somehow alert the owners to get it inside, right? So I knew option one was off the table, so now I had to move on to option two, and that was going down the hill. Now, for obvious reasons, I couldn't really bring myself to come face to face with the dog. I had sort of mentally and physically just stopped moving towards it as I was like a house or two down from it, just staring it off. I even crossed the street to get on the same side of the street as it was, and still just couldn't do it. Something inside me was just saying, hey, just turn back, just turn back. It was probably for the better, given that if I were to come to blows with that dog, even though it's like 4 feet shorter than me, should I have missed the kick, or should I have missed a punch, or any sort of hit, I would have become supper time. Part of me would have been gone, the mouth would have just chomped down, my biceps could have been gone, and my inner thighs and crotch would have just turned into dinner. So didn't want to risk that, ultimately just ended up going back to my house, where it actually followed me for part of the way. So you can already tell that this dog was definitely a bitch, because it was willing to intimidate people way outside of the property where it really had to protect. And that gets me into the topic of the owners of dogs, and how they share equal culpability in their complacency when it comes to raising a pet or owning a pet. So I was walking, it was during summertime, in 2021, and I was just walking, enjoying myself, just a leisurely stroll through the neighborhood. I can't exactly remember if I had earbuds on or headphones on, but I was listening to music, and I passed this corner house. Of course, being a corner house, the front lawn faces the street on two sides. And outside, that's where they had their pit bull, the people living there. So as I'm walking by, posing no threat whatsoever, the dog just starts incessantly barking at me for no reason other than to, I don't know, just make it feel like it's tough. So I just walked by that first day, not paying much mind to it. It was annoying, but I didn't really want to get into a situation where I would have to act out or something like that. So that was that, right? Well, next day, I'm taking that same route. I passed by the corner house once again, and evidently, I guess I was a little more irritable this evening, because I had actually, when the dog was barking at me, I had made the conscious decision to sort of Bruce Lee, sidekick, the gate that was right in front of the dog, just almost stepping on its face, essentially. Did that, dog scurries across the yard like an absolute bitch. Not too long after that, I guess the owners saw me, the people living there, and they come out. Guy starts going, hey man, don't kick my dog like that, It's worth mentioning that after I kicked the fence, I started chasing the dog, to further intimidate it and to silence it. I definitely didn't help my case there, but of responding to the owner saying that his dog had provoked me, which it had. There really was no excuse that he could have used, so I guess he just pulled the first thing he could think of out of his ass. He was all like, well, just don't try to hit my dog like that, man. Which gets me into the point I wanted to talk about when it comes to dog owners, is that they will proclaim ownership over their pet in a moment that conveniences them the most. So in this situation, of course, I scared the living crap out of the dog, and he comes out and he's like, hey, that's my dog. I wish he could actually say that in moments where the dog's in the house and he has to train it or something. Because if he's just saying that so that I could just back off, that's just not good dog ownership at all. There's no responsibility or anything taken to try to mellow its animalistic tendencies or to train it. So as I said before, this oftentimes leads to them using the most feeble excuses for their dog's aggression. They'll probably just say something like, "Oh, my dog's overly protective, sorry," or "Oh, it was just excited," and it's like, dude, your dog looked like it wanted to bite my ankle off. Like, why should I forgive? You're the owner of your dog, so just take the responsibility, if you will. Alongside that, should you have ever responded or been provoked, they will very readily try to turn the situation onto you. I don't know if you would call that gaslighting or whatnot, but they pin it on you despite you being provoked by a potentially a dangerous animal. That doesn't remove the fact that your dog literally wanted to bite me and chew me apart. Now, I'm a young, able-bodied person, so I could, should I have to, defend myself from a dog, but should it have been like an elder or someone who was more vulnerable, that would have been a much uglier situation, and that's the last thing you'd want, is someone being in danger due to your lack of accountability for your dog. Which brings me to the next anecdote, and one that is not as violent and not one that involves as much action as before. Now, you all might remember that last summer I went on a trip to Seabrook, Washington with my aunt, uncle, my cousins, their household, right? And I remember one day when I was on the beach with one of my cousins, we were going on this trail, and on the trail we were greeted by this woman and her dog. I think it was like a bulldog or a pit bull. It might have actually been like a pit bull or something close to that. And this is one of the few occasions where I honestly think that she did the right thing, the exact right thing. The dog was on a leash, and I didn't realize this at first, but she was holding, kind of holding the dog back, blocking it from us with her legs, to which I later learned that was because the dog was just not friendly. My cousin had been told that, but since I was following some distance behind him, I didn't know that until he had relayed that to me. I'm not making this up when I say that as I passed the dog, I literally said,
"What the dog doing?"
The question once again comes to mind, what the hell was it even doing outside if it was to be so unfriendly? I understand that, maybe not all dogs can mellow out their aggressive tendencies, but at least try to, If a dog's gonna be outside and you know that there's gonna be people around, then just take control and just manage it, manage its temperament, and get it down to a point where it's more approachable and more friendly and not as eager to tear someone apart. We're not in the wild after all, are we? In conclusion, dogs are nice, bright, beautiful beings, right? And they have a beautiful coexistence with mankind. Some of them still suck, but whatever the case, I think that whenever we refer to dogs as man's best friend, we often need to temper it with something of a solid reality. Just because we refer to these animals with such love and compassion, that some of them just might be waiting to tear you apart. So thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that, and hope that has helped educate you on the nuances of dog behavior. And yeah, see you in the next video, whenever the hell that will be.